Okay, we're a little behind time, so as people are coming in and we're closing up, I'm going to just get us rolling. Hello, everybody, and good evening. My name is Richard Joy. I'm the Executive Director of ULI Toronto. It's great to be here in George Brown's beautiful waterfront campus in this most auspicious of weeks, it being Labor Day. The word beautiful waterfront campus was written into the script before I actually saw how incredibly beautiful this script is, campus is. My goodness. This evening's reception is also the unofficial kickoff, or maybe the official kickoff, of the two-day Mass Timber Canada Conference organized by Rothblace and the Brookfield Sustainability Institute, which many of you will be attending. So welcome to you all. As always, though, we begin with a land acknowledgement. As a Toronto region-based organization, we acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, and newcomers in this generation or generations past. We'd also like to acknowledge and honor those who've come here involuntarily, particularly descendants from those brought here through enslavement. I'll just add just a bit of context around the land acknowledgement, something that we at ULI are taking very seriously as our partners throughout the industry. And as we see in the years ahead, I think you're going to see real definition behind what that means in land and development in the Toronto region. And I hope that you'll stay focused on and be part of a really important journey as we start to really define what I'm starting to term as economic reconciliation as one particularly important frontier. So I just want to add that into the land acknowledgement, something that you'll be hearing a lot of from us in the coming weeks and months, and of course years. Before I bring up our partners from George Brown College, I also want to acknowledge ULI's annual sponsors, with Link, and they're going to be up on the screen. And I'm going to just jump into our evening sponsor, our event sponsor, Unity Wall, as our key supporter for this evening and has really made this evening possible through their generous contribution to this event. So thank you very much to Unity Wall. A little applause, please. So it is now, I'm going to, without any further ado, my distinct honor and privilege to call to the stage our host for the evening, our true host for the evening, Dr. Gervin Ferron, President of George Brown College. Dr. Ferron.
Thank you very much. It's actually really fantastic seeing everyone here tonight and also have the opportunity to make some welcoming remarks. So good evening to all of you. And this is such a fantastic gathering. As was just made mention, my name is Dr. Gervin Ferron, and I'm president of George Brown College. So it is absolutely my distinct pleasure to be able to welcome you here to the Waterfront campus for this amazing and very important event. And it's organized in partnership with the Urban Land Institute, so ULI, Toronto, as well as George Brown College, for which you're here, as well as Rothblace. And this is quite the amazing evening because the topic of discussion pertains to the idea of affordable mass timber, cracking the code for sustainability and affordability. And without question, I think both of those items are really fundamental to how we think about the world, all of us. And I think your presence here tonight also represent an ongoing interest in being able to think about sustainability as well as affordability. As we begin, I'd also like to bring attention to the land acknowledgement. And as the land acknowledgement has been formally stated, I'd just like to make mention that one of the amazing things, at least for myself, having the opportunity to live across Canada, is to recognize that all of us in Canada, all of us as Canadians, have obligations under the treaties. and whether it is particular location that we stand and live and work in, regardless of where we are in Canada, we are all by definition a party and treaty peoples, and consequently it really has been quite outstanding over the number of years with Truth and Reconciliation by way of one example. But the hard work that each of us and all of our institutions are putting in to be able to not only look at reconciliation, but also to be able to forge an incredible future for the inclusion of all Canadians. And that then means that when we think about sustainability, we can also think about sustainability of relationships. With that, I'd also like to make mention on behalf of George Brown College as a whole, as well as the Brookfield Sustainability Institute. It really is quite amazing to recognize that each of you have been invited here tonight to be a part of sharing your knowledge, your capacity to be able to deal with two fundamental issues. And the first one being the need for being able to mitigate and reverse human-led climate change. And without question, we can see in terms of some of the news reports that's been going on over the last number of months, years, that is a fundamental reality affecting us no matter where we live on the planet or where we live in Canada as well. But also the second consideration that is having a significant impact on us, either directly or indirectly, which really relates to the considerations around providing affordable and safe housing for all. And I think without question, all of us understand the idea of accommodations, residence, that safety, that sense of well-being that is provided by having affordable and safe housing for all of us. So in many respects as well, I think that tonight's event and the dialogue that will happen over the next couple of days relates to considerations around the use of sustainable net zero carbon impact technologies and systems to be able to erect and construct mass timber structures wherein we can live, work, and thrive. And one of the amazing items for us here at George Brown College, and I'll refer to that a little bit more formally in just a moment, is just as you came into the building here, you got a chance to see Limberlost Place, you got a chance to see the idea of mass timber being a real component of our commitment here at George Brown College. So we're not only talking about it, we're actually living it, we're building it, and we will be shortly using it. In that regard, I think it's also really interesting that just a few years ago, any consideration as it relates to having a strategy around institutional use of mass timber would have been very much in the realm of fantasy. But here at George Brown College, we're very, very proud that we're at the forefront of being able to turn mass timber construction into a reality. And as made mention, Limberlost Place, right out in front here, is on George Brown College's 10-story mass timber building that will be completed in just a couple of, I almost want to say a couple of years because that's how we used to talk about it. But if you can believe it, the clock is ticking, and in just about a year from now or shorter, we'll be really pleased to be welcoming our students, our communities, and yourselves to being able to be a part of that building. And in that building, a number of you may have already had tours, but I do hope as you walk out of this building and look at what we're doing, that recognition of the incredible commitment that we've made to mass timber here. So we'll be opening that building within about a year or so, and Limberlost Place will become the permanent home of the Brookfield Sustainability Institute. And the Institute is George Brown College's unique center of excellence focused on creating applied solutions relating to climate change. And I'll make mention about Luigi in just a moment, but just why don't we take a moment to applaud Luigi for all that work done as well. When I think of Limberlost Place as well, it really represents the continued evolution, both in building code as well as an area that we here, as we've thought through what we're doing, the idea of de-risking, the idea of having proof of concept in terms of development and construction as it relates to mass timber building for institutional usage. And without question, there's been a lot of courage exhibited by us, by others, in being able to move forward with what we're doing. Would also like to make mention of something that is not in the script, but is very real. One of the interesting items about the building for us is it actually came about through a set of engagement led by Luigi and a number of others, where we asked our students, what could we do as an institution to address climate change? And one of the suggestions was in terms of our next build, for it to be a mass timber building. And to just think about that connection between our students, often that next generation, and their vision, and now the realization. And I'd like to also recognize our students and all those individuals who've been a part of that. Well, talking about partnerships, without question, it means that we've had partnerships, whether it's business, government, academia. I refer to our students as well, in being able to demonstrate solutions that will aim at addressing climate change. But also to recognize that what we're also doing is demonstrating that these possibilities can be financially viable, feasible, and as well as socially and economically desirable and socially responsible. So again, being able to look at all those components in terms of how we move forward. Well, I also want to recognize that tonight's dialogue and the conference as a whole is really about considerations of replacing carbon-intensive materials and building systems with mass timber, and as well as to be able to explore in the Canadian context, how will we meet some of the housing demands, which is kind of estimated 5.8 million new homes being needed in Canada by 2030. And with a little gray here, 2030 is just around the corner. So being able to meet those needs is quite an incredible feat, and how we do that while at the same time recognizing the sustainability considerations is a part of your dialogue. And I'm quite sure that it'll be really interesting to see some of your thoughts and some of the relationships that you'll form as all of you are here to engage not only in dialogue and learning, but in sharing as well. Well, shifting to a carbon neutral approach to construction is not only an opportunity, but it's also a challenge. And I think that this makes it for all the more important why we wanted to take this opportunity to bring together individuals from not only locally, but also internationally, to be able to share your expertise and your knowledge in what we might do as we move forward. So at this time, it's really fantastic that I've had the opportunity to sit next to Jose Toral. And I'd also like to welcome him. He came here all the way from Barcelona to be able to share his knowledge, his work in terms of affordable mass timber housing in Europe. And I really look forward to being able to learn from him and to recognize that he'll be able to share his journey. And like most journeys, I'm sure it has ups and downs, but through it all, lessons learned, which I think is so amazingly important. And in just a moment, he'll be formally introduced as well. At this time, as I made mention about Luigi, should just like to make mention that Luigi Ferrara is George Brown College's Dean for the Center for Arts, Design, and Information Technology. He's also the chair and CEO of the Brookfield Sustainability Institute. And in just a few moments, he'll be introducing our speakers as well as panelists that you'll be hearing from tonight. Well, a little bit about Luigi. Above and beyond being an amazingly creative and engaging individual, he's also been with the college since 2002. So that's now a number of years in that regard. And that means that much of what we've achieved here at George Brown College over the last couple of decades, he's been a part of making those contributions. Without question, he's a transformative leader, and he's also spanned a wide range of roles here at the college, and I won't do the full list, but without question, a lot of different roles at the college. But maybe most recently, what he has done, he's led the transformation of the Institute Without Borders from a academic program and innovation studio into the Brookfield Sustainability Institute. And that was done just about a year ago. So in many respects, when we think about what the Brookfield Sustainability Institute has already achieved in just a year, a lot to be applauded as it relates to Luigi. And with that, I think it's also befitting for me to introduce and welcome Luigi, and he'll be taking it from here. Again, it is my honor, my pleasure to welcome you to George Brown College, to have you a part of the facilities. One of our theme is really the idea of how the college engages with a range of communities, and you as a community, how we bring people together to be able to solve and address contemporary challenges. And without question, each of you are here making that contribution. We are really proud to be partnering with others, and as well as to recognize all the sponsors that are a part of that. And I'd like to also thank the panelists and our keynote speaker as well. Luigi, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Fearon, for the super kind words. As you rightly said, shifting to a carbon neutral approach to construction is certainly eco-friendly, but it comes with its own set of challenges, and therefore engagement platforms like the mass timber database that we're building and knowledge sharing like this conference are so important, because we're all moving into a new territory, and we need to learn from each other as we're doing this important work that we need to do to have our planet be safe as we move forward. Today, as we're gathered here, I'm deeply honored to and express my heartfelt gratitude to all of you who've made this event possible. Not only the audience, but there's been unwavering support and dedication and collaboration from a number of people, and I want to thank them. I'd like to express my gratitude to Rotoblas, the co-organizers of this overall event, for their invaluable partnership. We're grateful for this opportunity to work hand in hand for a more sustainable future with them. Special thanks to Francis Laurent Chabot, Clarisse Coultier, and Eleonora Dalfovo for their constant support in organizing the conference over the next 2 days and working with ULI and us on this event this evening as well. Thank you so much to ULI Toronto and Quebec Investissement, who supported this event to create a platform to share ideas and knowledge in advancing sustainable building practices. Really special thank you to Richard Joy, who really quickly came together with us to make this event happen, and to his team, Tamina Curtis and Alexandra Rybak, who worked so hard on tonight's event with our team. And I want to express my gratitude to Element 5 as well, who joined us as our industry partner. And lastly, but certainly not least, thank you to the team at George Brown College for their support, and to the remarkable team at the Brookfield Sustainability Institute. Kudos to all of you for your hard work. So I'd like to thank Jacob Kessler, who's been organizing everything from our end, as the director of our business development, Joe Ananje for all the graphic and design work, our video crew, Andrew Wright and Michael Nguyen, and Finn Crockett, Shweta Singhal, Laurie Endis, Practice Kingdom, and Matt Poon, and others who've been working to help make this event happen. We're excited to have you all here for this evening, which is the kickoff for the 2-day conference that follows. And now I'd like to introduce tonight's keynote speaker, Jose Toral. He's a partner at Paris and Toral Architectes, and alongside Marta Perez, his partner in the architectural firm, which is based in Barcelona, he is doing some of the most amazing work in low budget area in social housing, but also incredibly significant work. He just recently renovated the House of Architects in Barcelona, which was originally designed by, I think, José Luis Serra. And you can imagine in Barcelona, to redesign the House of the Architects is not an easy challenge, but one that he did stupendously. The firm focuses on exploring new ways of living and building to tackle the challenges presented by the climate and housing emergency that we're in. So I think he's a really appropriate speaker for this event and for this evening, and he's here to share his knowledge and his experience from Europe. I also want to mention, if you've seen or see his work, and you will in the slides that come, he's also a very fine architect, and I think he's starting to win many, many prizes, including one in Berlin, which he's supposed to receive on Friday, but he can't because he's here with us. So I want to thank him for taking the time to be with us and to share with us. Jose.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. Actually, for me, it's a surprise being here. Can you hear me? It's a surprise being here in the country. You know much more about timber and mass timber than I do, because I come from Europe, but actually more from the north of Africa. You know, we're in the bottom of Europe, so we normally don't build with mass timber. Yesterday, I was talking with Luigi, and I told him that normally when I do a lecture about this building in Barcelona, I normally explain a few things just to understand why we did this building with timber. And I was not supposed to explain this, but Luigi insisted me to do it. So let's try just to understand. To understand why we are using timber, mass timber, the first thing is to understand which is the relation we have between architecture and technology. You know, it's not something that it's separated. So about what happened with the steel. In 1709, Abraham Darby invented cast iron. And he was only able to work as a compression, and they use it as they were using brick or stone, making the arch. So they did in the 1825-21 St. Pancras station in London with this cast iron. You know, so the technology also it's like part of the aesthetics. 100 years after the cast iron, Henry Cort, another English, he developed the industry of rolling steel, and about this we were able to use steel with the tension, and you know we can see how Paxson showed the world the new. This is the Crystal Palace. Is the moment where we understand the modern movement will begin with this building. You know, with this idea of using a material that is available to give us this big span. And finally, at the end of the 1855, Henry Besserman designed a process of how to making the mass production of steel. And that's about, from this technology, we were able to have lots of amounts of steel, and you know, we can develop, you know, this. I think this is the lecture, but it could be the Toronto Dominion Center of Chicago. You know, this technology that allows us to do this skyscraper. So you have to understand, and you know, the steel. You know, maybe the 19th century was the century where all the architects they had the opportunity to understand and to develop how is the expression of this material was going to be. The next century, we will talk about concrete. This is the material that will be developed in the 20th century. The story begins, it's a very funny story because they were using stone. They used to have, this is in London, Eddystone. It's in the middle of the Canal of de la Mancha. It's between London and Paris, France and England, and is to be done with stone. But they had this problem how to join the stones because it was falling each time. So you can see here, it was falling because the way they were joining the stones was not able to support the water, the salted water of the sea. So they made a competition and they asked somebody to be able to solve this problem. So John Smeaton, he created a thing he called the Portland cement, just to make this new lighthouse. It's also done with stone, but it's glued with the Portland cement. And this is like the beginning of this history that will develop in the 20th century. Then, so it was in the 1960s, so it was a bit farther away from the steel. Then at the end of the 1867, there was this gardener that designed some planters with this cement of Portland, adding with some aggregates. But the important thing that he decided to put some steel, some iron in it. So he invented the reinforced concrete. And here we can see many of the first time I went to university, I saw this image. I didn't understand why are they showing me this. This is how is all architecture being built. But it was something that decided Le Corbusier with his Maison Dominion. But if you go to many construction sites, you still see this image of making the slabs and the pillars. Okay, this was happening at the beginning of the 20th century, 1940, and also at that moment, Eugène Freyssinet, a French engineer, understood that if you put some iron and you make some tension, you can have this post-tension concrete, so you can have big spawns and make new kinds of surface. And this is the technology that allowed John Hudson to give us his Opera Sydney. So the important thing here is to understand there's some aesthetics, there are some decisions of architecture happening because of some technologies. And that happened in the 20th century, and now we are in the 21st century, and now it's the moment of the wood, the timber, the mass timber. I think that this is why we are here. So the story of timber is the story of a problem that we have the limit of the length of the tree. You can use the timber for structural elements, however we want, but limited by how tall is the tree. And maybe here you have taller trees, but in Europe, I think our trees are not that tall. And so there was this French architect who wrote this book that he decided a way of how to join with small elements. I don't know, this, okay. It was called Philibert Dorme. So the Dorme system is how to join small elements just to make a big element. And this is the clue of the timber, and the evolution of the timber is this. Here it was used to do the coverings of the castles on many of the churches in Europe. So in the 1693, you can see this caserne was a military element. And then at the beginning of the 20th century, there was this German engineer, Otto Hedner, that understood and designed a way how to glue the timber. So we don't need to make joints, small joints, so we can glue it in a way that it's able to resist the exterior conditions, and that brings us to the glue lamp. So all the 20th century, we had the glue lamp. Here's one example of one of the first buildings made in America. I think this technology came to America in the 30s. And I think many churches and many elements were done. So we could have this potential of how, if we are able to glue it, we can have a linear element, but only one direction, you know. But it can also give us like this aesthetics of having big spawns. And finally, in 1994, university, from the University of Graz, German Schritthofer invented cross-laminated timber. And this was like the big change that I think is the big revolution why we are now living this change, is that the moment we are able to know, we can have elements in the two-dimensional. So now, before we only have the line, but now we have the plane. So we can work with this plane. So we are, you know, normally from the technology to the architecture, it happens around 50 years. So we are now in a moment so that we have to develop this technology. So I will explain a project from my office in Europe that try to explain one of the possible solutions, but there are many other solutions. And I just wanted to show like this evolution just to understand why are we talking about the mass timber. It's because new technologies have come abroad and we have to understand, and also there are technologies that are good for our CO2 emissions, and that we have to understand between the work of all of us how this can be solved. Okay, this project, it's in Cornellà, but Cornellà actually is like, for you, it's part of Barcelona, because, you know, here you can see the city center. I don't know if I can point. It's a bit difficult to point. Okay, this is the city center of Barcelona, and this is like the highway that goes around. So this is here. And the important thing is that it's a very low income, you know, only 10,000 euros per year. So it's not the richer part of Barcelona. Okay, this is like, you know, it was made in the 60s, you know, with this polygon, with these block systems. And here in the plot where we have the building, there used to be a cinema. So people were not very happy when we were decided to put the building, because even the cinema was closed. The people would love it to be done again. But okay, here is the map. You know, here to understand Barcelona, this is the city center. This is like all the neighborhoods that are around. And here you see this is the colors is the annual income. So the darker is the lower annual income. So it's a poor part of the Barcelona city. And it was, we found this competition. We had this plot. It was measuring, the planning regulations were very strict. The plot regulation would say, you have this plot of 50 by 40 and you have to make a patio of 15 by 25. So we were not sure to do the competition in the office, but we decided, okay, we cannot decide which is the answer to the city, but we can try to begin from the interior and give some geometrical approach. And the question we did is, okay, how has to be the house of the 21st century? And maybe we thought it has to be some way different. And the idea we had was changing the aggregation unit. So normally you put one dwelling as a unit for projectual unit. But we said, okay, maybe the unit has to be the room. So what would happen if all the rooms in a building, in a house, will measure the same? Because when things measure the same, there is no hierarchy. So for us, the important thing and what links the project to the 21st century is the no hierarchy situation. You know, we think the new kinds of family, you know, they don't need any hierarchy, even the nuclear family. It doesn't make sense that the room for the parents can measure more than the room for the sons. So if you have a house where all the rooms measure the same, it's more equal, and it's not also more equal, it's more democratic, it's also more flexible, because when things measure the same, you can interchange them. So because you can just move the furniture. But the question is, okay, which has to be the size of a room in order to this to happen? Okay, I think because the standards in Europe are different than here, but just you to understand, a single room of a building in Barcelona, it's 6 square meters, double room 8 square meters, a main room 10 square meters, but we thought this was not enough in order to be a living room or to be a dining room or a kitchen. So we took out the dining from the living and we put it with the kitchen. But we took this reference. We decided, okay, Marta, my partner, she made a PhD about the Japanese house. And we found that a very nice thing is that in Japan, they don't call the rooms, the name of the rooms as not, they don't call them by their use because they change the use during the day. So they call it because of the size. So the size, the size is because of the tatamis. It's tatami measures 90 centimeters by 1 meter 80. That means it's a person lying in the floor. So it's more or less like a bed. And this is a tatami, an 8 tatami room. So that means that measures 360 by 360, nearly 13 square meters. And the important thing is that the openings are not are double openings. So they are we have these porosities. So we decided to do the competition with this matrix of rooms of 360 by 360. Afterwards, we found out that the version of the Grete Lichowski kitchen of Frankfurt was measuring 360 by 350, and La Petite Cabanon of Le Corbusier was measuring 366 by 366. So we have the more flexible room, the more technical room, and the room for thinking of Le Corbusier, all of them fitting in our matrix of rooms. For the ground floor, we decided that everybody, instead, we put the course in the corners, and we decided that everybody will enter it. Instead of entering directly to each one of the cores from the street, we decided that all of them will share the same enter. We have a porch, and everybody will enter through here. We will have this patio as a communal area, and then we will enter to the building. This part of the building is made with concrete structure, so the distance between the supports is 7.5 meters. And we have a basement because we used to have a cinema, so we have some cinema facility and we have a parking. Okay, it's important here, the section, because here, from up to here, you have the concrete structure. From here, everything is made with mass timber. We have this porch, and from the porch, you enter to the patio. The important thing here is that this is facing south, so we have hot air here facing to this facade during the day, but as we have the porch, this is a very cold air, and cold air moves towards hot air, and here, so that generates some microclimate and some movement of the air during all the year. So this is the image of the porch and the entrance. For us, it's important that everybody will share the entrance. So instead of having 4 communities, only have 1 community. So you can see the concrete structure up to here, and then the rest is all made with mass timber. Okay, you are entering, for us, it's important it to be close, but it doesn't have to be close, it has to be more close with, not with a fence, more with a filter. with the importance of the transparencies. We are entering to the cores in each one of the corners. So here is the moment where we change from the concrete to the wood. And here is everything only wood. This is a stair, all made with mass timber. It came in one piece. I think we'll see some image afterwards. And all the metrics, all the elements were fitted in the grid of rooms I told you, even the stair. See here, we have like this situation of all equal rooms with this porosity between the spaces. So the importance of this plan is that it's not easy to see the limits between the different units or the difference between the communal area. All of them are looking the same. This is very important for us. This indeterminacy of the spaces that show us that in the future we can rearrange all the elements of the building. But when you go closer, I don't know, it doesn't. I don't see if it looks very well, but okay, here's the stair, and here's the room, a communal room where you enter, and this is a corridor, and you're here, you're entering directly to some of the dwellings. So each one of the dwellings is normally 6 modules, 6 modules, 6 modules and a half, and these ones are smaller ones, 4.5 and 4.5. And it's important, like, you have all these connections between the rooms and the wide openings between the spaces that, even though you are in small spaces, you're able to see more than one space on the side. So this is the stair I was telling you. This is one of the entrance of the houses. This is from the private terrace. This is the door of the house. And this is the importance, what I was telling you, this porosity, when the big openings, that you're able to see not 13 square meters, you're able to see 3 spaces. Wanted to build this idea of the enfilade of rooms, like putting the kitchen in the middle. That makes that you're able to do a house without corridors, and also show the importance of the domestic work. So it's not something that is hidden, it's something that is exposed, that everybody has to work on it. And you're able to see even 4 rooms in one point of view, this idea of these connections, and you can decide where to put everything. Then the importance of the corners, with the corners and the sliding doors, you're able to put the furniture in the corners. The relation with the exterior is with an intermediate space. It's important, we decided to let the timber exposed because when you expose timber, has hygroscopicity and has the ability to regulate humidity. So we have very high humidities in Barcelona in summers. So this helps us to regulate humidity. We put the solar protection in the exterior part. That means that we are able to generate some shadow and some special space here. Everything, it's decided to be white, so the reflection of the light, ventilated facade, and all the decisions took it, being able to generate some microclimate in the summer in these spaces. But when you see it from the exterior, you look like more like a filter where you can see how people are living. So we have some fixed solar protection, movable solar protection made of timber. When we go up with the stair, we have some communal spaces in the last floor. These are images under the construction. This is under construction, finished. Okay. And which are the advantages of building with timber? Maybe this is something that you already know, but we can go a bit through it. Okay, when a tree is growing, it absorbs CO2, it converts it to oxygen, and it captures the CO2. And the point is, at the end of the life of a tree, if we let it burn or let it decompose, it liberates all this capture of energy. Instead of doing that, if we cut it and we dry it, we capture this CO2. So we are able to use like this CO2 as a material of construction. But also, it's a material that is coming from the biosphere. So we can go back to it and it grows again. So if we do a good maintenance, we can have it for many years. And also, if we let expose the timber, it absorbs, it has this hygroscopicity that is able to regulate humidity, also to absorb some of others. And then we have like it's a very light material, so it's the fundamentals of the building are lower, the low cost, and we can industrialize and make it faster. So some way we like to explain that these are benefits for society, these are benefits for the user, and these are benefits for the constructor. So all the agents have some benefits of using this technology. But there are some difficulties, We have some challenges to solve. We have to solve the fire resistance, the cost, and the noise between neighbors in the case of the... So when we did the competition, we were thinking of making all the walls with CLT and making that all the walls were structural. But then we had to solve the fire-resistant regulations, and then we understood that there's two ways to solve the fire. So one of the ways is to increase the section of the wood. So here, if we put more wood as necessary, each centimeter extra is around 30 minutes. So in this case, the evacuation of the building needed 90 minutes of fire resistance. So that means we have to increase 3 centimeters each one of the faces, the exposed faces, the wood. And that's what we did with the slabs. But imagine, and then the other solution, the one that we did in the facades, it's covering with plaster. So we put the 2 plaster boards. Each one of the plaster boards is around 30 minutes also. So we put 2 plaster boards and 1 centimeter extra in the CLT panel of the facade. But imagine doing this with all the crosses, all the interior crosses. We have to increase 3 centimeters extra in each one of the sizes. And it was not economically a good solution. So that's why we thought that the best solution was using CLT for the slabs, CLT for the facades, but not for the interior part, and change the interior part for glulam. So that's why here you can see this situation. And this is like the final plan we did. You see all the facade and all the slabs with the CLT, but in the middle using the pillars and the beams with glulam. And for the cost, we decided just in the competition, we were worried about the amount of wood we needed to do this because it was social housing. We had a very low budget and nobody was expecting to pay more for this building because it was made of wood. Nobody asked to be in wood, the competition. This is something that we proposed, so we had to keep in the same budget as a standard building. So we were working, we were thinking, okay, we have this 360 distance between supports. So which is the deformation of a slab? in this situation, we have these 6 millimeters. But if instead of doing this, we bring a continuous slab, a continuous panel, and we compensate moments, as we see here, then the deformation can go to the half. So we can have like 3 millimeters of deformation. And then if we add the cantilevers, it gets even lower. This is like the diagram, the bending moments diagram. This is this boring thing that they explain us in the structures, but sometimes it can help us to make cheaper things. So here, by compensating moments, we're able to have only 1 millimeters. And that means that in the first situations, we needed more than 15 centimeters. In the final situations, we only needed 12 centimeters. We built it with 12, with 15, because we added the 3 extra centimeters we needed for the fiber to let the slab expose. And for the beams and the pillars, we wanted to do the same, but the problem is that you cannot have beams of the length of the building, so you have to make joints. And making joints with timber is not easy to make them. The easy way to do it is as an articulation. It's very difficult to do an hyperstatic joint. So going back to the bending moment diagram, making the joints here where we have the more moment was not a good solution because we will do an articulation. Moving the joint to here where the moment is 0, it's a way of making the joint as an articulation, but at the same time compensate moments. So we designed this piece that allow the beam to pass through, so to go to here, that is this 1/5 between the distance between supports. So, all the detail is in order to compensate the moments and make the optimization of the amount of timber. So this is the piece. No? It was important for us. For me, this is a clue for the project. We thought, having decided this element, we couldn't have paid the building. And here you can imagine, you can see how the bending moment is happening in the building. So it's interesting that the technical solutions are also showing us the aesthetical solutions. And this is the good news, is in the competitions we needed 0.5 cubic meters by square meter of building, and in the final scheme we only needed 0.24 cubic meters by square meter. That means that with the same facade, with the same slab, only changing the interior part, we have less than the half amount of timber. So I always say that even though building with timber is sustainable, building with half of the timber is more sustainable. No, it sounds funny, but there are some people that says, well, as timber is compensating some CO2, it looks like that using more timber is more sustainable. It's not like this. And finally, the more challenging thing was acoustics. The problem in acoustics, we have the direct sound and the indirect sound. So here, we are in this situation. Normally, we can use the law of mass with the concrete. So if we have more than 300 kilos, we are able to solve the partitions, and we have more than 400 kilos per square meter, we are able to solve the slabs just with the law of mass. But as we wanted to take advantage of the timber being a light material, we don't want to go this way, so we have to use the mass spring system, okay? So that means that we have to work with layers, so we have to put a mass, then a spring and another mass. So to solve the slabs, well, the partitions, the good thing is that as we don't have CLT in the partitions, we can solve them with plaster boards. So we go to a standard solution of 5 layers of plaster boards. And the facade I also already explained it to you. So we can see here how it was solved. And then to do the slab, we have to add a mass because the timber has not enough mass. So we add 6 centimeters of sand, that is from, the sand from the beach. Then we put, the rock wool to make the spring, and then we add a concrete, 5 centimeter concrete, to make a floating continuous situation. Okay, so this is the details. And this solves the solution when the sun is going directly. So if the sun actually would do this, or would do this, or would do this, this solves it. But the problem is that sun is not doing this. What happens to sun is that goes to the slab, and instead of only going there, it moves horizontally. And from here, this is vibrating, and is able to let the vibration to the slab be beside, and then we have this acoustic break or bridge. The point is, what we did is, we decided to cut the slabs in order that we don't have this continuity. So we talked with our acoustics, we put an acoustic band here, so that means that you have to be very rigorous with the structure and the plan. But there is more bridges. Maybe somebody talks here. This is a structural element. It makes a vibration, vibrates the CLT of the facade, and then it makes vibration here in the slab underneath. So there are some joints here that you can pay. I think Rotoplas have some very beautiful joints. We didn't have even money to pay that. So, but we make some simulations, and we understood that if these continuities, each time the sound has to make a movement of 90 degrees, it loses a 30% of effectivity. So with two 90 degrees situations, the effectivity was so low that it was not considered a bridge. So we just try to solve it that way. And this is the final plan. This is the material used, where you see all this connection of the construction and the plan. Here you can see these joints one direction, here in the other direction. And finally, one of the advantages of the fast construction. This is the first week, 2 weeks. The first week is complicated because when you begin from the concrete, we have 5 centimeters from one corner to the other of difference. So we have to put this piece of wood in the base. But then here we can go a bit faster. So 4 weeks. This is the point where we are making the stairs. This is this element of the stairs that will come in one piece. So they build it here, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. The interesting thing here is that the stairs is the structural element that allows the wind to solve the horizontal action of the wind, but we cannot put them at the beginning because they will fall because of the wind. So we have to do 2 floors, then put the stairs inside, it was the kids' games that you have to put it. It doesn't fit sometimes. And then at that moment, all the construction is going around like the stairs, the towers. Okay, and in 9 weeks, in 2 months, we are able to build these 5 stories mass timber construction. And then the nice thing is from the first week, you can also work underneath. So you save a lot of time. And here you see this is the image of the stair and how they were fitting it when we had these two stories. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose. Yeah. I feel like I've just been in a master class of how to build a really, really smart mass timber building. You may be shocked. The cost of that building was $150 a square foot, because social housing budgets in Spain are not that dissimilar from the ones in Canada. I think our social housing budgets per square foot are considerably higher, but that shows you the kind of ingenuity that you needed to bring to bear on a project to make it viable. And I thank Jose for sharing that with us tonight. It's now time for our panel discussion. This whole panel sort of was inspired by the mass timber panel that we had at the ULI during the summer, and where we were discussing, would mass timber be only a solution for luxury buildings or premium buildings? And so the challenge was on to try to find out if we could demonstrate, could mass timber be a solution for affordable buildings, and could those buildings transform our cities and enable more affordable housing, the missing middle, as we were calling it. And so now I'm going to invite our esteemed panelists to come up and discuss whether we can crack the affordability problem with mass timber. And so I'd like to introduce them. Jose, if you can come up to the stage and be in the first seat. You know who he is now, and you've just heard and seen his work. We also have with us Claire Brewster, who's a consultant for nonprofit management and capital project. Claire specializes in capacity building strategies for charitable organizations and parapublic institutions. So Claire, if you could sit next to Jose. And then we have with us Mariga, who's the Vice President of Wood Green Community Service. Mariga is responsible for Wood Green's affordable housing growth and development strategy with over 20 plus years of experience. He's an acknowledged thought leader in the affordability area, and we were very lucky at George Brown to have worked with him when he was the Director of Peel Housing and Toronto Community Housing, because we did a number of projects with them. And then we also have with us Leith Moore from Our House Solutions Inc. Leith co-founded Our House in 2018 to provide affordable housing solutions for urban families and allow them to self-solve their housing needs. He was previously a Senior Vice President Development with Fieldgate Homes and did mid-rise buildings with Fieldgate Urban. And prior to that, he was with the Sorbar group of companies. The panel will be moderated by our very own Joe Cressy from George Brown College. Joe is the Senior Vice President for External Relations, Communications, and Real Estate Development at GBC, but he's also a former politician and activist who served on Toronto City Council from 2014 to 2022. So Joe, please take over, and the floor is yours.
All right, well, we're going to follow on that, Jose, and thank you very much for the presentation, and Claire, Mariga, and Leith. And Leith, might I say, that's a very dapper-looking photo of you up there. So the title of this discussion here tonight was Cracking the Code, Sustainability and Affordability. So I think everybody in this room already knows you're here. We have some enormous challenges facing our city, our province, our country, the globe when it comes to the sustainability and affordability. So the premise here, of course, is that mass timber is part of the solution to both. So before, I want to see if we can make the case on that. But before that, Jose, we just heard from you. I want to hear Claire and then Mariga and Leith. If you could just tell us a little bit about what you are working on right now in the mass timber and affordable housing landscape. Situate yourself in this conversation. And Claire, maybe you want to kick us off, and then I'll come to you, Mariga and Leith.
Sure. I'm actually working on an affordable housing project, which is not typical of affordable housing. It's a healing lodge, and I support the organization that is leading that project. And the importance of mass timber was twofold. One is that the indigenous commitment to environmental values, to sustainability, thinking 7 generations ahead. That was an important aspect to the heart of the building. The other aspect had to do with fundraising for the building, and what we discovered was that if we spoke to the need for an environmentally efficient building, one that offered better environmental commitments that were consistent with best practices, we were going to be able to find more resources in terms of funding to set the stage for this building. And that included committing to reducing the operating costs for the building so that the building itself is sustainable as a social housing and affordable housing and healing lodge type of initiative, means that it is going to be living with the constraints of nonprofit dollars. There is no opportunity to pass future expense to future owners. So having that long-range sustainability, not just in initial design, but in operations, was key.
And Riga, what about yourself in Woodgreen? Where do you fit into the mass timber and affordable housing discourse?
So the mass timber discourse descended on us serendipitous. So if I can just explain Woodgreen Community Services, our primary constituency for alternative profile is the Harrison House. So the average rent that people pay that live in the house will barely scratch $400 overall. So when you have that as your particular need, you have to do something very different. In addition to that, if most of you know, most of Woodgreen's housing is located in the East End, in Leslieville and Riverdale. That is not a poor area. So the cost of housing and the cost of land in that particular part of the world is way above the average in Toronto, which is already high enough. So one of the conundrums for us is, are we going to then exit this landscape as Woodgreen because we maybe move further out and leave this neighborhood to be an exclusive neighborhood, or what do we do to do that? So we got together with the local church, which obviously on the downfall, an aging asset, and that we were able to leverage a relationship with them to build something that was affordable based on the land. So one of the drivers of affordability for us is you gotta have good land. But the other leverage of affordability is construction. We had, however, in terms of sustainability and what is a very key part of making social housing part of the neighborhood and an accepted element of it, part of it, especially when you have such high-end commercial restaurant and neighborhood in that. We had to make sure that we built something that had an architectural appeal, but also preserved some of that history. And using that combination of social capital, relationship in the neighborhood, we were able to come up after we met up with a design part that works for us with the economics of mass timber, which is cheaper right from the get-go. Mass timber is cheaper right from the get-go, and we can talk about the potential for that. So those are some of the fundamentals around that, and then that allowed us to, with these, again, the serendipitous rapid housing initiative, capital dollars from the province. We took a while. We were able to convert that into a mass timber.
And Leith, our house, you guys are all over the place right now.
We are. Yeah, wood is good. Ontario wood is better. After I've been in the business more than 40 years, and for 35 of them, I was told small could not be financially feasible, and doesn't scale, and it's not profitable. And I think that for 35 years, that may have been true. And the big companies are doing fine. Don't worry about them; they're okay. And so the challenge was my sort of a 40-year quest. I've known Who here has read E.F. Schumacher? Small is beautiful. Economics is if people matter. Nobody.
I saw 2 hands up.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Tell us about it.
Thank God. Well, anyway, it's a good moral to live by. And so really what our house is about is taking wood and all wood buildings above grade. We don't use concrete except for foundations, and talk to some crazy dudes in Denmark to try and get rid of those. I use mass timber. My friends from Element Fiber here, we work closely with them. We use wood demise panels, panelized construction for increased level of completion. And the whole idea is use wood and make it cheaper. Great idea. You still have to go through all the things you've heard about, acoustics and structural in 4 years, and alternate post solutions. We put those together. You're still not finished. The next thing you have to do is design something that can be repeated. One of designs are the bane of costs, and this is what we usually do. I'm on a mission to try and convince institutions and municipalities to stop doing a design, tender, build process. It doesn't work. It's too expensive. The trades will just run trucks through extras on those things. So what we've done is created a modular design for people. And by modular, I don't mean 3D boxes. We are a panelized tilt-up, off-site fabrication with exteriors done so we can be faster. So we've taken that and we could apply it. And at the time I agreed to do this, I didn't realize that 2 of my clients sitting beside me. So hopefully they're still happy. And the idea is that we take those modules and we parametrically adapt them to the program of the individual client. But we're not changing our basic structure. We're not changing the basic principles of what we build. And that leads to the last part, which is we build in an IPD format, which is normally used for hospitals and colleges and universities. But we've adapted it to our small building. Mariga's building is 50 units. Claire's is almost 30. And so these are small buildings, and these are not the kinds of buildings that most contractors will go after. And they're hard to build cost effectively unless you have, as I said, you've designed it, you're using wood, it's no wet trades, it's faster. But now our trades know our product, know our modules, and in an IP format, they put their profit on the side, they get their costs. If they perform, we all make money. If they don't, nobody makes money. And so it's a way of leading costs and leading labor costs over time. So our approach means that for building a sustainable passive house kind of design, tight envelopes, lower operating costs out of wood, it will get cheaper over time as well because the trades are used to it and we amortize that design over every project. We can make it look different all the time, but the interior structure and layout is repeatable. And that to me is the key to make. So the answer to the question is yes, you can make mass timber work for affordable housing.
So I want to pick up on scale, which you mentioned there. So if we think of a city like Toronto, 1 in 4 adults are living in poverty. 1 in 3 kids are living in poverty. The waiting list for Toronto community housing, social housing, is 100,000 people. That's just demonstrative, not exhaustive of need in this city. So we have a huge affordable housing challenge facing us. So scale, from a mass timber perspective, what innovations need to happen? And I'll open this up, whoever wants to jump in. And Jose, this doesn't have to be in the Toronto context. What innovations do we need to see in mass timber to create more affordable housing at scale? If we're going to deal with the huge exhaustive need, if this is going to be a real solution, how do we scale it up, and what innovations need to happen? I'll just open to anybody who wants to jump in.
Yeah.
I think just to reinforce, and I think I saw a visual of the rendering for Bowden. I think the key thing is design and making sure that you don't have too many one-offs. This is not to suggest, doesn't suggest that every one of them needs to look the same. In the case of our building, we've used the church facade and then built in the mass timber building. You can see that. That church, the terrain will look the same. Some of the key components of the church will look the same. And so the mass timber is inserted in between. And I think that flexibility is part of where you optimize design, preservation, and cost in a really good way. But to go to another deeper sense of what is needed, I talked about when I calculate the square footage cost of what we're doing here compared to what we did 3 years ago, concrete building about 5 blocks south of that on Girard in a piece of land that even is of less value. The cost is pretty much the same. But my point is, if you use the inflation factor, we're already about 20-30% cheaper. If you use the factor that we don't have economies of scale yet applied to the timber, mass building timber thing, style approach, there's a long way in terms of separating the cost between concrete. But the presumption of how you get there is on how you multiply the number of housing, social housing communities that you build using mass timber. To do that, we talked about the actual cost of concrete versus and also the design. But I think the most important thing is the kind of partnerships that we need, including the partnership we have with them and other nonprofits partnering around this kind of innovation. That is part of the value of nonprofit housing, to be able to be at the forefront. If enough of us can get into this kind of building, and especially when you can see it delivers quality, we start the journey of creating an industry around this. And it's only when you begin to start creating an industry out of the production of housing that you're going to start getting to the answer of scale. Because that now starts to impact the whole value chain of construction, design, and for us also down the road, we're very interested in how it connects with employment for the constituency of people that we house, so that they become part of this new thing, because they were locked out of the concrete industry type of affordable housing. Yeah.
And Jose, I see you coming in. And feel free, folks, this is a friendly environment. Feel free to jump in.
No, just, okay. I have no doubt that it's not a matter of us, that in 20 years it will be much cheaper building with timber than building with concrete. There's no doubt. This is not something that we have to do. It's going to happen. In Europe now the problem is the factor of the scale, no? The economy of scale, no? Because now they are investing in many of the plants of making the CLT. So we have plants that are able, normally an average plant is able to do 50,000 cubic meters by year, but now they are investing to be able to do 200,000 cubic meters or a bit more. And now we have like 2 or 3 enterprises that are on that. And the problem we have is that we didn't invest in the forest, but this is something they are doing now. So they're doing things that in 20 years, it will make everything much cheaper than it is now. And if we apply the environmental cost to the materials, then concrete will be much more expensive than it is now. And this is about some regulation. So it's not something that architects will solve. It's something that the industry is solving it, and I think the regulation has to be able to regulate the correct price with the environmental cost of each one of the materials.
The regulations are so. I used to be president of Toral Home Builders and Ontario Home Builders, and fought the battle to get 6-story wood approved in Ontario. I mean, they had it in Vancouver for a decade, but it took me 1 year before, basically, to get 6 stories. Now we're going to be 12. But so there's always regulation, building codes, fire encapsulation, there's more to do. Single stair buildings, bring some single stair buildings from Barcelona. That would make small buildings really rock here. It's horrible. We build border buildings with single stairs and shit. So, but it's also about training. Mr. York's in the audience, so Local 27. I think, Michael, we've been singing in the wilderness.
Carpenters, for those wondering.
Carpenters Union, thank you. I think I'm still the only residential mass timber building in the province. I think there's more coming, but they're not there yet, so I can say it for another year. Proud of it. But there's training, it's logistics, building wood is more like iron work, so you got to tilt, and it's not concrete pouring. And so we need to do different trades and last mile assembly, pre-cladding. There's so many things. We need an industrialization strategy. Ontario is a place with, can't swear, right? I'm in the university setting.
You've sworn once, but you can't swear.
Swear again.
Okay.
I used to teach at Waterloo, and I quit when I started apparently triggering students with that language. So
Let's stay with me.
I apologize. I apologize in advance. But we need an industrialization strategy. Ontario's in a great place. We've got wood, and we've got to stop shipping it out somewhere. We've got to start making things with it. We could be the center of a great mass timber industrialized strategy. And I know that's something we're working on doing for the other things we need in our building, like timber, not mass timber, but dimensional panels for inside and logistics, last mile assembly. So our house is investing in companies and working with them to grow that part of the business. We have to put our arms around the whole piece. And we're our own builder as well, sort of control the GCs and sub-trades in our IPD. It has to be like one big piece. If you parcel out, all the economies are gone.
Claire?
I was going to add that we talk a lot about economies of scale, but we very rarely talk about economies of scope. And those are the competencies that you get from experience and repetition. And I think that what we are seeing from the building in Barcelona, from the buildings that we're working on, if we want to have a diversity of built products, so that in particular, if we're looking at affordable housing, we're not having a reductionist approach to affordable housing. People deserve to not be impoverished by their environment. It's extremely important. We know from history that when we put people in large or repetitive tenement complexes, that does not produce quality of life. And so we need to avoid situations where we're so focused on scale that we're not focusing on competency and building economies of scope. So we need more prototypes of diverse buildings. We need to get away from buildings that are all just a central core with scissor stairs and an elevator and everybody living in little boxes around an inhuman core. We need things that tackle the challenge of how do you do structures where you've got, courtyards in the middle, where you've got, diversity of floor plates that create structural challenges. So those types of things. And we have the benefit in Canada of having a reasonably good social system. We also have the advantage of having quite a well-managed forestry system. And mass timber is only as sustainable as the forestry. And we do in Canada have we have a massive forestry industry. We have massive amount of forest land, and we have a fairly unique forestry management system in that it's primarily federally owned, and we have 3 different systems for sustainability: the Forestry Stewardship Council, the Sustainable Forest Sustainability Initiative, and the Canadian Standards Act. And those things together with cooperative industry, and I'll remind you that FSC is industry-led initiative. So those are what help us get sustainable mass timber yield for the industrialization of this as an approach. But it relies on public investment in prototypes that are diverse.
So I want to take time. We have about 10 minutes left. I want to give a chance for anybody in the audience to open it up for a question or two. And while you're pondering who's going to be brave enough to put their hand up for a question or two, I just wanted to comment on that. We've talked about cracking the code, sustainability and affordability here. But as you just spoke about there, Claire, there's also a component here in mass timber of thinking through local procurement and local economic development opportunities as well. And I don't think we should lose sight of that.
BC, Ontario, and Quebec are the main centers for forestry in Canada. They're also, some of our largest population centers. It's where we have some of the most organized affordable housing and social housing initiatives around across the country. But it gives us the opportunity to say, okay, how can we look at moving economic development into the regions, closer to the mills, ensuring that there's a concept of the leakage of investment. So when you're looking at Ontario funding for Ontario housing, you want to try and retain as much of that investment in Ontario as you can if you're using Ontario dollars. Federal dollars, it's looking at the more the national economy, but still you want to try and retain as much of that investment within the community that the funds are coming from.
I'll just mention, we are in a college. Anytime you step into a college or university these days, of course, every room is named after a donor. Limberlost Place is named after a forest. The donor owns the forest, our generous benefactor there, because we see the value and the vision here going forward. Let me see, anybody in the audience? I wanted to give a chance for a question or two. I see right in front there. Here, I'll bring the mic right up to you.
That's so kind of you. Thank you. Since time is short, I'll make it a rapid-fire question. I wonder if each member of the panel could tell us if they could work their will, the one policy change that they think would advance the cause of mass timber construction the fastest or the best.
It's a good question. You actually ruined my final question. So rapid fire. I don't want to see any long answers. One policy change. What do you want to see?
For me, I already said, is paying the proper cost, the mental cost of each material. The transportation, the content, all just putting the right price, because now we pay not too much to things that are very contaminated. So just this, for me, with this, then everything will.
I would change the procurement policies of every municipality and institution in the country.
Marie Claire?
I would make sure I would change policies that impact how banks lend money to the affordable housing platform and CMHC, of course, as well. Because they are all sort of stuck in the concrete industry type of building. So that's what I would.
I would ask the government funders to provide funding for the level of risk assurance that they're looking for. They, a lot of the projects are stalled. You'd get capital funding for construction, but you don't get pre-construction funding as easily. And the litmus test is whether or not you can provide them with a guaranteed project, fixed price for the budget that you have, and the amount of time it takes to get there. In the projects that we're working on is really where there's the least amount of efficiency. So upfront funding and price, fund the risk that you want to avoid.
Okay. Another question. I saw another hand at the back there, but I'll just caucus around. Yeah, made me running right up to the back. Yell it out, actually. We'll probably be able to hear you.
Thank you so much. My question is very simple. So we talked about using that in terms of housing, offices, but what about industrial? What about warehouses, big malls, where enclosure malls for retail assets? Is it possible to use that to do that?
It adapts itself very well. My first mass timber project was one that was built in 1912. I can't pretend to have built it, but I renovated it and I wouldn't do it again. I'd rather tear it down and build it new. But warehouses were NLT, what we call it now. And that's all. Post and Beam with NLT is the Toronto warehouse. Every Broadview Lofts is one that was well done. I built it. And it's an NLT. We had all kinds of factories in Toronto like that. Massey Ferguson site full until we tore it all down. Most cities kept theirs. So it adapts well, and I think I heard today from Element 5 that they're working on some retail sites as well. So it's coming around to everything. It's seeping its way into sustainability thinking, and a lot of funders, as soon as the interest rates get a little better, will come back to thinking about sustainability. It's the first thing they forgot about when interest rates went up, but they'll be back.
And to your point, most of the industrial plants built in the early part of the century were primarily built of wood. And that's how the fire sprinkler system was in fact invented as part of the de-risking of the timber factories. I went to one of them in Minnesota. That was in fact the origin of where the owner recreated the fire sprinkler system, and that opened up a whole boom of construction in wood. Yeah.
So I guess my last question here to wrap this up, and then I'll hand it back to Luigi Ferreira here. We have a lot of expertise around this panel in a lot of areas. And the theme again here is we're trying to unlock solutions on sustainability and affordability. So I just want to take a step back. It doesn't have to be mass timber specific. I want to take advantage of you being here. I just want to hear from each of you as we look to the future and the twin crises we face on affordability and sustainability. What gives you hope? And I want to hear from each of you at a high level or micro level. What gives you hope?
I'll start. Maybe you can finish. Filling all this a lot of hope. You know what? I woke up this morning and there was this in my mind, and I went into my LinkedIn, and there was just tons of people, forums and so on, affordable housing. And the reason I say that is it's amazing today when you read history and the original iteration of social housing and affordable housing, and of course the parallel was, we were all supposed to go into home ownership. But the thing about that period is it was primarily driven by government. It was a centralized thing. Its anchors of sustainability was low income, labor market, and building those massive type, I think the minister called them Soviet style apartments and so on. What I'm liking about today is that this problem is owned at a much more community and society level. I like to say this, I haven't seen for a long time as many people in the private sector who are actually genuinely interested in this solution. There's a lot more people, even in the investment, that are more interested in this issue as solution. In some ways, government is behind because it has the old template of how we need to do it, and there's all kinds of new creativity. And the only thing is, we haven't brought it together in order to scale something. We've got many experiments. In order to scale something, we need to start forming consortiums that bandy around solutions that are operating at scale. And I could go on and on about that. But a lot of hope in the fact that there's a lot of people, sectors of the economy that are invested in this solution to this fundamental problem. In a way that's more powerful for me than it was 40 years ago when we say we built most of what we have as social housing. So the potential is unlimited.
I was in a panel probably 15 years ago where we talked about what is sustainability, and it's a word that is very heavily used, and we came up with a lot of ways that we thought were kind of capturing the essence of it. But one of them had to do with sustainability itself is hope. So I think that when we think about sustainability as our effort as a society to limit the negative spillover effects of our actions and our policies, that's one of the things where if we focus on our objectives of creating a quality of life where we're not, our quality of life is not dictated to us by the the efficiency of the market by unfettered unfettered forestry, for example, in the case of mass timber. You're only going to have affordable housing if you have a certain amount of income equality. If you have unfettered income inequality, you will always have palaces surrounded by slums. If you have unfettered forestry, you will always have deforestation. And so I think when we look at our policies and we work on understanding the negative spillover effects that come from where our policies meet, if we can start to transition to that, that gives me hope. Because 20 years ago, I was working on social marketing campaigns to educate the public on the importance of the environment. And now we have composting as municipal programs. Those are things that were unheard of before. We worked in poverty alleviation. People, we see change over time, but it needs to have effort focused in the right place. And this is addressing system issues when it comes to affordability.
Leith, and I'm going to give Jose back to you for the last word.
Well, 4 years ago, we thought we had an idea, lost money for a few years, built a couple, now I'm building 10. So I have hope. That's a big increase. It's a small drop in the ocean, but it's 10 buildings that are moving forward. And I think that we see that kind of opportunity growing. A lot more friends now than they used to, a lot more understanding in government.
10 times 10 more.
Yes, it's just, I can see it, feel it. We even had a socially progressive counselor like Mr. Cressy, Councilor Cressy at the time, sponsor in his ward a 10-story mass timber repeatable social housing building that is now, thanks to your work, is working its way through the city. And Trade Toronto can use it as a template for projects, and they'll put it in there and put up 10. So kudos to you for participating in that. And, so yeah, all of that gives me hope.
And
Okay.
for the last word, Jose, hope.
Okay, now my hope, I think every moment there's a generation that it's the one that has the responsibility what is happening in every moment. I'm sure I know that my generation has failed. Has very badly. I know, my sons, my grandsons will never understand what our generation did. I tried to do my best, and I'm sure that everything that I showed today that I think we are very proud will be very badly seen in 30, 50 years. They will say, and they were thinking this was sustainable. Yeah, no, I'm sure of that. Because you try to be your best version of your moment, but your moment is so badly. So even the best version of our moment, but my hope is the next generation. When I see the Z generation, I don't know how you call it here, but the Zeta, Generation Z, that they don't allow. They are not waiting for the government to do the things. They do it by themselves. I see this generation, and I'm sure what they will do, it will get much farther than whatever I can dream to do in my generation. So this is my hope.
Well, thank you very much for the panel. Luigi, back to you.
I just like, first of all, I want to say we need Villiers Island to become a mass timber neighborhood. This is the kind of project that we need. And so I'm tremendously excited by everything that's happened tonight. But I want to call on Colleen Hart of Unity Wall Corporations to formally close off the event.
Thank you, Luigi. Hi, my name is Colette Hart. I'm the Director of Sales at Unity Wall, and I was one of your sponsors this evening, so thank you very much for attending tonight. And a big thank you. I'm going to go off script. Thank you for bringing me back to school after Labor Day as an adult. It was very exciting to get a new backpack and go to school today. So thank you, Jose, Claire, Maruega, Leith, and especially to Joe for leading tonight's conversation. Thanks, everyone. And then I think the next slides, did you want me to talk about Copenhagen, Thamina? Great. Okay. ULI has a lot of events, so stay tuned on the email website campaigns. Future programming for you is the exciting event this fall called Sea Change Summit in Copenhagen, Denmark on October 10th to 13th. Those of us that are unable to attend will get lots of information sent back to us following the event, and they'll do a great publication for us. I think there's a few people in the room going to Copenhagen, so please take your questions. You can sign up for your events at Toronto at uli.com /events. That's it. Good night. See you at networking. You're welcome.